I wanted to make a quick video on how to install Windows 10 as a bootable microSD card so you can play games like Destiny 2 on the Steam Deck. The first thing that you want to do is go ahead and Google installation media for Windows. This should be the first result that you see. When you get to this page, go ahead and click Windows 10. That's going to bring up this page, and you're going to download now to create the Windows 10 installation media. When that pulls up, you should get something that looks like this. When you start it, it's going to take maybe 1 or 2 minutes while it prepares to get things ready, it says. You're going to hit accept. This is going to take a little bit. That's going to spin for a little bit. You're going to want to create installation media. Go ahead and leave that checked right there to use the recommended options for this PC. You're going to unselect USB flash drive and select the ISO file. And this is going to prompt you to ask where you want to save this file, and you can just save it in your downloads. It's automatically by default named Windows. You can change it to whatever you want. I kept it as Windows, but I'll show you what to do for the next step. So that last step is going to take a few minutes. While that's running, what you want to do is go to Google Rufus download. It's going to come up to a web page like this. You can go ahead and download the latest Rufus executable for 64-bit Windows. Once you download that and run the executable, you will get something that looks like this. So what you want to do at this point is plug in your microSD card into your Windows PC, and I'm going to walk you through the next steps on how to create a bootable Windows ISO on your microSD card. Now that you've got Rufus installed and your microSD plugged into your computer, you're going to want to make very sure that you are selecting the correct drive label for the microSD card. This process is going to wipe everything on the drive. There should be nothing on that drive that you don't want deleted, and you certainly shouldn't select a drive that is not the microSD. So go ahead and confirm that when you're opening my computer to just see that that's the drive. Anyway, let's move on. So you want to go to the boot selection. You're going to select the ISO you just made in the previous step using this select right here. Make sure that you're choosing the image option Windows to go, and then nothing else about this needs to change. So you're going to go ahead, you're going to click Start. You're going to select Windows 10 Pro. You're going to keep this single option checked and click OK. It's going to warn you that all the data is going to be erased. Obviously, that's our intention. We're going to create a bootable microSD that has Windows on it, and so that's going to be fine. You click OK. And this is going to take a while. I think it's possibly going to take an hour, who knows how long, but I will come back with the next step. So while Rufus is creating your bootable microSD, you'll want to go ahead and grab the official Steam Deck Windows resources. These are the drivers that you'll need to do things like connect to your wireless network, allow Bluetooth to function, and upgrade the graphics drivers to work with the Steam Deck's custom APU. You'll notice here that Steam lists that dual boot with SteamOS is not yet available, and installing Windows requires you to wipe your Steam Deck. Do not get alarmed by this. What they mean is that a bootloader like Grub is not yet sort of curated to work in a user-friendly way with SteamOS and the custom Arch Linux distribution that they've created. You are just going to use the BIOS to boot into your Windows microSD. It is not going to mess with your SteamOS installation at all, so don't be afraid of this warning label right here. This does not concern you. It just means that it's not as pretty as they want it to be yet, and they're going to make it a lot nicer in the future for you to have a dual boot installation. So don't worry about that. Just go ahead and download each of these drivers on your Windows PC that you're using to create the Rufus bootloader, and I'll show you the next step after this. Once you go ahead and download all of these, I'm using WinRAR. You can use whatever zip utility that you like. Go ahead and select all of them, right click, and you can click extract here. That's going to go ahead and unzip all of these drivers, and we're going to move these onto the Steam Deck's bootable Windows drive. So here that is. For me, it's F. It's going to be something else for you. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call this Steam Deck Windows drivers. You can call that absolutely whatever you want. I'm going to take these folders here, I'm going to move them to that, and that should be done. Once your Rufus installation has created your bootable SD, you're going to move all these in here, and then the next step for us is to plug in our microSD card into the Steam Deck, and we're going to boot from Windows onto the Steam Deck. So to boot into the Steam Deck BIOS, you're going to want to shut down your Steam Deck, and you're going to want to turn it on by holding down the volume button, volume up button, and the power button. And that is going to boot your Steam Deck into the BIOS, and it's going to allow you to boot into Windows. So there's going to be a sort of long boot process that says getting things ready. That for me was in portrait mode. I wouldn't worry about that too much. As you can see, it's gone back to landscape mode for whatever this blue interstitial is. But I'm going to let this load, and then I will, oh, here we go. So I guess we do not need to let this load. We can just start walking through this together. So the first thing I'm going to do is click United States, that's where I live. US, yep, that's right. I do not want to add a second keyboard layout. I'm going to select that I do not have internet. Remember, we're going to install the Wi-Fi drivers after. Go to continue with limited setup. Remember, we're going to do everything internet related after we install the wireless drivers. Okay, accept. I'm going to put name in here. I'm going to make a very nice password. I'm going to type it again. I'm going to go through these security questions and then cut the video back. Okay, so security questions done. I am not going to do any of this stuff to help Microsoft. You can select those if you want. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to install Cortana either. So here we go. So once this starts, I will report back again and we'll do the next steps. Okay, so we made it. We're going to not use Microsoft Edge, and you can tell we are not connected to the internet or anything like that. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into our drivers folder, hopefully. Here's our C, here's our Steam Deck Windows drivers. We need to find the WLAN driver, that's it, I think. Setup. So this should be installing our wireless drivers. There we go, wireless LAN. Well, that was fast. So now, there we go, pizza party. That's me. Sure. Let's see if I forgot my... There we go. Now we're on the internet. Okay, so now we need to install a couple other drivers. So let's go down here. Let's see. I want to install the graphics driver. Set that up. So we're going to go through each one of these and we're going to install them, and I will go through that process and I'll let you know any of the caveats that I run into that you might want to know about. Okay, so we ran into something that was weird. It looks like this goes into portrait mode or something. So yeah, you can just kind of drag that. I'm going to click finish. I'm pretty sure that if I go to the desktop, actually I can go to landscape. Okay, that is not it. There we go, portrait. landscape, keep changes. There we go, fixed, easy. So another issue here is for this driver, you will need to click View, File Name Extensions, and this INF file is the one that you want to install. So if you open it, it's just going to open a text file. Obviously, that's not something that you're interested in doing. You want to install this. So you're going to right click, and you're going to click Install. And that's going to run you through the process of installing this one. So there you have it. We have finished installing Windows. I've now logged myself into Steam. That was very easy. Installing all the drivers was no problem at all. It automatically defaulted to the native 800p resolution of the Steam Deck. And the only unfortunate thing about this whole thing was I wanted to show you Destiny 2, and unfortunately Destiny 2 is 94 gigs. So a 128 gig SD card after this Windows installation has about 79 gigs left. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to delay that until I can get a 256 gig SD card shipped to me, and we can go ahead and try Destiny 2 out, because that would be pretty neat. One quick note on the default boot behavior that you should be aware of is Windows Boot Manager, because of the process that we just accomplished, puts itself as number one in the bootload list. That means that if you have the Windows MicroSD card in your Steam Deck and you turn it on, it will by default boot into Windows if you don't enter the BIOS. Also, if you update and restart Windows, or if you just restart Windows, it will by default restart into Windows. If you take out the MicroSD card while the Steam Deck is off that has Windows on it, and you press the power button on your Steam Deck, it will just normally boot into SteamOS like you would if you had never installed Windows on the MicroSD card. I personally believe that this is the most intuitive and not surprising behavior. I enjoy that particular way that the bootload is set up by default. If you, for whatever reason, want to be able to have your Windows SD card in your Steam Deck, you press the power on button, and by default you'd like it to boot into Steam, you can easily accomplish that by holding down the power and volume button to boot back into the BIOS. Change the boot order and drag the Windows bootloader to the bottom or below, or just below the SteamOS, and that will create the behavior that you would like. I personally enjoy the default way that it's set up, but if for whatever reason you want SteamOS to always be what is booted into by default, which I can understand, all you need to do is move the Windows bootloader below the SteamOS boot in the BIOS.